It was like A, B, C, D. I pull over, they get in, I drive a little ways, stop, pull a knife, a gun, whatever, tie them up, take them out, and that would be it.
He was every woman's worst nightmare, always staying one step ahead of the detectives.
Bobby Joe Long is a serial killer. He sits on Florida's death row, convicted of murdering 10 women.
This monster was picking these girls up and killing them.
But his next victim, a 17-year-old girl, was about to turn the tables on him.
It was pretty easy to tell from the very minute I grabbed McVey that she wasn't like the others.
Tampa, Florida, May 13th, 1984. It was Mother's Day, a sunny spring afternoon, the air still warm with the glow of family gatherings. After spending time with their moms, two boys ran off, eager to let their parachutes, crafted from plastic bags, drift in the breeze. Their giggles echoed in the air as they dashed through the open field, blissfully unaware of the dark discovery ahead. Then, in a moment that shattered their carefree spirits, they came across something horrific, a woman's lifeless body. She was face down, her hands tightly bound behind her. A cord was cruelly wrapped around her neck, like a leash that had snuffed out her last breaths. Beneath her still form, a white silk scarf lay twisted, a silent witness to the tragedy that had occurred. Dr. Charles Diggs, a forensic pathologist, shared his thoughts on the case. He pointed out, this killer was definitely trying to send a message. He could have taken this woman's life with much less brutality. The severity and visibility of the bruises indicate that he used a lot more force than needed. This shows a troubling level of violence. The victim was quickly recognized as 20-year-old Lana Long, an exotic dancer from the Sly Fox Lounge in Tampa. At the scene, detectives discovered some faint tire tracks close to her body, but not much else to help them. Homicide investigators started looking into Lana's boyfriend, John Corcoran. Even though they lived together, Corcoran hadn't reported her missing, despite the fact that 3 days had passed since he last saw her. Major Gary Terry, the lead investigator on the case, voiced his worries. John Corcoran had a reason for not reporting Lana as missing, but it was pretty unclear and didn't have much detail. That definitely set off some alarms for us. Corcoran admitted that he had a fight with Lana the day she went missing, feeling annoyed by all the guys ringing their doorbell to ask her out. Then, just a couple of weeks later, another body was found in a secluded area. Major Gary Terry, the lead investigator, couldn't shake the memory of his drive to the crime scene. He thought to himself, I just kept hoping, please don't let her be tied up. Please don't let her be bound. When I finally got there, it felt like a ton of bricks had dropped on me. In just 2 weeks, we went from hardly ever seeing a bound victim to discovering 2 of them. The next victim was a 22-year-old named Michelle Sims, who had previously competed in beauty pageants but had turned to prostitution to fund her drug habit. When police found her body, they noticed fresh tire tracks in the soft sand nearby. What was unusual was that the vehicle had 3 different types of tires. Detectives made plaster casts of the tire impressions, hoping they would help them catch the killer. Given the striking similarities between this case and the previous one, investigators were pretty sure the same person was behind both murders. However, this time, John Corcoran had an alibi and was no longer considered a suspect. In the forensics lab, they found a small but significant clue on Michelle Sims's clothing, a mysterious red fiber. This fiber matched one found at Lana Long's crime scene, specifically on the white silk scarf that was under her body. Then, on September 18, 1984, the nude body of another woman was found, 18-year-old Chanel Williams, who had a previous arrest for prostitution. Major Gary Terry, the lead investigator, remembered the moment they found her. This case stood out. The victim was a black woman, her body left by the side of the road, totally naked. Unlike the earlier victims, she wasn't restrained. They found some clothing tied in a knot nearby. She had a gunshot wound to the back of her head. At first, it looked like a completely different situation from the others, but then again, could it be? The forensics lab quickly came through with some important info. they found tiny red fibers on Williams's clothes that matched those from the previous 2 victims. With this discovery, detectives kicked off a major investigation, hoping these fibers would lead them to the serial killer before he could strike again. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department was on a mission to trace the source of the strange red fibers linked to all 3 murdered women. Each fiber was put under a microscope for detailed analysis. Using a scanning electron microscope that magnified over 1,000 times, scientists noticed some unique size and shape characteristics that could be vital in solving the case. Herb Bant, a fiber specialist, described the fiber's unique structure. Instead of the usual round or square shape, this fiber looked more like a triangle. It had a pinched appearance which made 3 separate legs stick out from its center. The fibers discovered on all 3 women had a distinct triangular or trilobal shape. The next move was to figure out if these fibers were made from natural materials or synthetic ones. Since synthetic fibers are created through chemical processes, scientists utilized a melting point apparatus to determine the temperature at which the fibers would decompose. The findings confirmed that the red fibers were indeed nylon. Further microscopic examination showed that all 3 trilobal nylon fibers were dyed in the exact same color from the same dye batch. The takeaway: the red nylon trilobal fibers found on the 3 victims originated from a single source. This type of nylon is commonly used in sturdy, budget-friendly carpets often seen in cars and hotels due to its dirt-masking properties. Then, homicide detectives turned their attention to the tire impressions discovered near the crime scenes. Tire tread specialists noticed something odd. The vehicle had 3 different types of tires. The front tire was easily recognizable, a standard model from Goodyear. The right rear tire was another Goodyear model, the budget-friendly Viva, but it had a white wall tread that was installed with the white wall side facing inward. The left rear tire, however, didn't match anything in the FBI's extensive tire tread database. Investigators sent the impression to Goodyear Tire Company in Akron, Ohio, in search of answers. Goodyear's experts identified the tire as a specialty model known as the Vogue, produced by the Vogue Tire and Rubber Company, which was exclusively used on Cadillacs. Similar to the Viva, this tire was also mounted with the white wall side facing inward. Detectives realized that if they could find a vehicle with this rare combination of tires, they'd likely have the one that left tracks at 2 of the murder scenes. They also suspected this vehicle would have red nylon trilobal carpet. However, Gary Terry decided it was best not to share this information with the media. Major Gary Terry, the lead investigator, expressed his worries. Serial killers are just like anyone else. They keep up with the news and read the papers. We were especially mindful of what happened in Atlanta, Georgia, with the Wayne Williams case. I had a chat with the investigators there, and they mentioned that the killer altered his methods after reading about his crimes in the news. He started to understand trace evidence, which led him to dispose of bodies in the river to wash away any potential evidence.
Hey there! If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us share more true crime stories. Have thoughts? Leave a comment. Don't forget to click the bell for updates. Now back to the story.
Deputies were sure the murderer was on the hunt for victims along Nebraska Avenue, a spot where prostitutes often gathered. To draw him out, female officers posed as sex workers along the street. At the same time, they ramped up the number of patrol cars in the area. Author Anna Flowers really highlighted the urgency of the manhunt in her book, Bound to Die. Anna Flowers, the author, shared her thoughts on how investigators think.
I've talked to a lot of officers who say, I have to think like the killer in order to catch him. I worry, what would it take for me to become the killer? Interesting thought.
A 4th naked body was discovered in an abandoned spot despite the police's hard work. The victim was identified as 28-year-old Karen Dinsfriend, who had turned to prostitution to fund her drug addiction. Deputies figured out that the serial killer was on the loose again when they found red nylon trilobal fibers on her clothes. Forensic pathologist Charles Diggs pointed out a disturbing trend in the cases.
the pattern that we saw here, the way that these bodies were left, the way that they were strangled, the way that they were tied, indicated that we had a serial killer.
But his next victim, a 17-year-old girl, was about to turn the tables on him. At 2:30 a.m., after wrapping up her shift at a donut shop in Tampa, Florida, 17-year-old Lisa McVey was biking home down a quiet, dark street. Out of nowhere, a man jumped out from behind a parked van, knocking Lisa off her bike. He grabbed her by the hair and shoved her into his car. Lisa McVey, the survivor, shared her harrowing thoughts from that time. He took Lisa McVey to an apartment. For the next day, she faced a horrific ordeal of constant abuse. Blindfolded and scared out of her mind, convinced she wouldn't make it out alive, Lisa decided she had to take action. Lisa McVey, the survivor, thought about her resilience during the tough times.
I had the life of God in me. I had the willingness to live, to survive. That's it, the survival part. When you're in something like that, you would be surprised yourself what you're capable of.
Lisa McVey, still wearing her blindfold, got a chance to use the bathroom. Taking advantage of the moment, she made sure to leave her fingerprints all over the place, under the toilet seat, by the sink, and even on the hairdryer. Lisa McVey had this intense urge to make sure people knew she was there. She thought to herself,
if I had died, if I was killed, I want them, as far as the police or whoever found me, to know that I was there and I tried.
Major Gary Terry noticed how sharp Lisa's instincts were.
Lisa was a very sharp young lady. I personally feel what saved her life was her actions, and those actions were to say yes, sir, and no, sir, to every demand that the suspect made of her.
3 a.m., after a grueling 24 hours of being held captive, Lisa found herself shoved back into the car at gunpoint, still unable to see anything because of the blindfold. Lisa was incredibly savvy when it came to the streets. Even with a blindfold on, she found ways to sneak a peek and pick up important details for the cops. Lisa was set on figuring out what was going on around her. She leaned back in her chair, just able to peek under her blindfold. That's when she spotted two hotels right next to each other, almost overlapping. She realized that Interstate 275 was sandwiched between them, recognizing one as a Howard Johnson and the other as a Quality Inn. Lisa looked around and noticed the word Magnum shining on the dashboard. She took in the white seats and the bold red carpet of the car. When her captor stopped the vehicle for a bit, Lisa recognized a sound she knew all too well.
I heard the sounds of the keys, of the buttons of the machine.
Lisa remembered the clatter of keys being tapped and the steady beeping of the machine, sounds that were forever imprinted in her mind from that tough experience. After a short drive, he pulled over, swung the door open, and casually set Lisa down on the street with her clothes. He told her to keep the blindfold on for another 5 minutes before he took off. Lisa felt a rush of freedom that left her in shock.
Freedom. Wow, I'm alive. I'm here. What do I do now? I looked both ways, and I fell to my knees, and I started crying.
Lisa McVey was quickly taken to the hospital, and her clothes were sent off to the forensic lab for testing. But just as they were about to start the examination, detectives got a call about another murder. Another naked body had been found near a highway overpass. The clues were clear. It was definitely him. Even though there were no ties found on the body, there were clear marks left behind, showing that they had been taken off. The forensic lab made a shocking discovery while examining the clothes of Kim Swan and Lisa McVey. They found that Kim's clothing had the same red nylon trilobal fibers that were present on the other victims. Even more surprising, those same red fibers were also found on Lisa's clothes. Major Gary Terry couldn't believe what he was hearing. It was beyond anything he could wrap his head around.
It was disbelief. We couldn't believe that we have, for some reason, the killer has not killed. He's let a victim survive.
Lisa McVey's amazing bravery and relentless spirit made her the first known survivor of the serial killer. With her special perspective and vital information, Everyone was counting on her to help finally catch him and serve justice. When the police realized that Lisa McVey's attacker was actually a serial killer, the clues she had given became incredibly important. One key detail was the word Magnum that she spotted on the dashboard of her captor's car. This led them to a specific vehicle, the 1978 Dodge Magnum. A search for Dodge Magnum owners in the area turned up 486 names. Lisa also mentioned that her abductor had used a 24-hour ATM just before she was let go. By comparing the bank transaction records from November 4th with the list of Magnum owners, investigators found one name that matched both lists: Robert Long. Robert Bobby Joe Long was a 31-year-old part-time X-ray tech, separated from his wife and a dad of two. Since Lisa had been blindfolded for most of her ordeal, she couldn't positively identify him from photos. To be safe, Bobby Joe Long was put under constant surveillance. Detectives tracked him to a nearby movie theater, and while he was inside, deputies checked out his car's tires. They found a Goodyear Viva on the right rear and a fancy Vogue tire on the left rear. Interestingly, both tires were flipped with the white wall side facing in, which matched the tire impressions found at two murder scenes. When Long came out of the theater, deputies quickly arrested him and took his car for further investigation. The tire treads matched the plaster casts taken from two crime scenes. Plus, Long's blood type was the same as a semen stain found on one of the victims. But it was the carpet inside the Dodge Magnum that really tied Long to the crimes. The red nylon trilobal carpet fibers found in his vehicle were identical to those found on the murdered women and matched the red fibers on Lisa McVey's clothing. The investigation took a turn as Chief Investigator Major Gary Terry considered an important question.
How was he getting so much fiber evidence on the clothing of the victims? Well, he was stripping his victims down in the car, and he was throwing the clothes in the floorboard of his vehicle. And the victim was kicking the clothing, kicking it was picking up the fiber evidence out of the floorboard of his vehicle. Fiber evidence is often referred to as a silent witness. It doesn't say a thing, but it just speaks volumes.
Bobby Joe Long, confronted with strong evidence, confessed to the abduction and assault of Lisa McVey, as well as the murders he had committed. He also disclosed two more murders that the police had missed, guiding them to the victims' remains. In all, Long confessed to a total of 10 murders.
It's just sad what happened to him. And that I could do something like that to somebody. All the victims, all of them, you know, and you're talking about a lot of them, a lot of lives just gone right down the tubes because of me. You know, in one way or another. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a pleasant feeling. I'm not proud of anything I've done. And the worst thing is I don't understand why. I don't understand why.
Lisa McVey, an incredible survivor, looks back on her journey.
Yes, it was bad. Yes, it was very traumatic to my life, but it's made me who I am today. The challenges in my life, the weaknesses that I had then, made me stronger, a better person today. And that's how I'm able to survive.
Bobby Joe Long, who spent years inflicting pain on countless women, finally faced justice. On May 23, 2019, he was executed by lethal injection in Florida. His last moments were calm, yet they resonated with the anguish of his victims, each one silenced by him. While his execution marked the end of his horrific story, the memories of those he harmed will never fade. For their families, it brought a long-sought sense of closure, but the wounds from his actions will always remain.